Hi everyone and welcome to this week's Wallsend history story. This week I will be covering a very short history of Wallsend Town Hall. I can't really cover everything that happened here as it would be a very long and no doubt boring video, as the majority of it would simply be about council meetings. So I will just cover the basic information of it being built and a few other little snippets of information about its life afterwards. I was also lucky enough to visit the town hall a few years back during one of the local heritage weekends. It was great to have a look round inside and see how well it had been restored by the current owners. I'm not including any of the interior photos that I took at the time, as I feel it's not really fair to share them without permission, but I thought it was nice to mention how well it has been looked after. For this video, I will only be using the external photos that I took recently and a couple of little news articles from around the time that it was built. I didn't really visit the town hall a lot when I was younger, but I do remember going with my nana when I was a kid when she went to pay her rates. I'm sure many other people will remember going to the town hall for similar reasons. A Wallsend Town Council existed long before the town became a borough in 1901. Back then, the councils were made up mostly of local professional people such as Robert Richardson Dees, Joseph Duffy, J.B. Hunter and several local doctors. They didn't just wander in though with a "I fancy the job" attitude. They still had to be elected just like they do today. They had held meetings in a couple of places, and one article mentioned a building on Elton Street, but I don't actually know which one, where they had been described as being packed in like sardines. They later used the Masonic Hall for their meetings, as this was no doubt a much larger space, but still not really ideal. Although the idea of a town hall had been discussed prior to 1900, I will just focus on 1900 onwards. When the town hall was proposed in May 1900, the council had been offered different areas of vacant land by several local landowners such as Mr. Mordew, Mr. Duffy and Mr. Hunter. In the end, it was decided to take the land, simply classed as a field at the time, next to the Coach and Horses pub on Wallsend High Street, which was owned by J. Watts and Company. The lease was to cover an acre of land and would be for 999 years with a yearly rental of £50. £50 was actually quite a lot of money in those days. It was also said that a further acre of land could be leased within the next 6 months on the same terms. The council had big plans for this land with a view to building the town hall and to also include rate offices, gas and water company offices, public telephone office, public post office, county court and police court, along with a fire station. They didn't see any issues with their plans and they assumed that they would be passed without any issues at all at their next full meeting, and this does seem to have been the case. However, it was decided not to build until it was absolutely necessary to do so. And although the town hall was mentioned over the following years, the next really notable mention is not until 1904, where it appears discussions had been held on the idea of having a temporary building, but it seems that the council decided it was a far better idea to erect a permanent building and not a temporary one. One temporary building had been described as simply a tin hut. More discussions in 1904 led to the request of tenders of plans for the proposed building. At this point they had plans from a Mr. Miller of Felon, but they wanted to see other plans before making a choice. It was also proposed that the council members were to visit other local areas to look at their town halls so they could see what worked and what they felt would be suitable for Wallsend. In 1905, Alderman Boyd expressed his concerns at the costs of building the town hall. This does seem to have been an issue over the previous years, and it seems to be one of the main reasons why the building was delayed for such a long time, and a couple of more years would pass before it was finally decided to go ahead with the building. The plans were accepted and the building work was set to begin in 1907. The chosen designers were E.F.W. Liddell and P.L. Brown, and it was to be built by Franklin & Sons from Newcastle, and the estimated cost in 1907 was around £14,000. I believe the cost in the end did rise, as was often the case, to around £15,000, which, if my online calculator is correct, is actually around £2 million in today's money. So it's understandable why they waited so long. Some plans I looked at showed a very different looking town hall to the one we see today. You can see from the photo on screen at the moment that the dome was in an entirely different place to what was actually built. Perhaps these plans were for a rival firm to the ones who did finally undertake the work. Maybe they're even Mr. Miller's plans, or perhaps early plans of Little and Brown which were changed. My drawing is hopefully clear enough for everyone to see. The original drawing was quite dark, so it was quite tough for me to do. The town hall was set to be a rather impressive building in Wallsend. It was built, however, at a time when unemployment was said to be quite high, so even though the wait to build had been a long one, some still felt it was the wrong time to build. The foundation stone was laid in June of 1907 by William Boyd. A large crowd turned out for the laying of the stone, and it's quite strange to see people standing on both sides of the wall during the ceremony. These you can see in many old newspaper articles from the day, but I haven't included any of those in this video. A lot of well-known people would have been there, although I have not been able to find a full list. I do know a few present, such as Sir G.B. Hunter, Mayor Murray, Alderman S. Harrison and Alderman G. Allen. It is said that various items were placed under the foundation stone, though I'm not quite sure if they were contained in a box or not, but I would assume that they were. And one of the things that was included was the records of the incorporation of Wallsend in 1901. So this would be a time capsule that may one day be found, but hopefully not anytime soon. The illuminated town hall clock was to be made by William Potts and Sons and was to be given to the town hall as a gift from Alderman William Boyd. I could be wrong here, but I believe the clock is a little fast these days, but it is definitely still going. The town hall was officially opened by Alderman George Allen in September of 1908. The weather that day was said to be quite bad, however a large crowd still turned out to see the opening, but due to the weather, the actual opening ceremony outside was cut a little short. Mr. Liddell of Liddell and Brown presented Alderman Allen with a gold key as a memento of the occasion. Inside the town hall, Miss Stevenson, who was the daughter of the current mayor, cut a cord which started the town hall clock. Mr. Boyd then presented her with a gold brooch as a souvenir of her part in the opening ceremony. Mr. Boyd then went on to ask the mayor to accept the clock on behalf of the borough of Wallsend, and that he hoped it would keep time for many generations to come, and the mayor then thanked him for his very kind gift. It was mentioned during the speeches that 25 years ago, from 1908, Wallsend had a population of around 5,000 to 7,000 people, and that today, 1908, it was around 30,000, so they had felt that now was the time to build their town hall. A description of some of the things in the town hall at the time of it being opened are as follows. The building will be lighted with electricity. This is still quite a big deal in 1908, as many homes in Wallsend were still without electricity in the 1950s. The main entrance was to be from the High Street, which it still is, and this would lead to a big double staircase. There would also be a second entrance and staircase to be found on Lawson Street. The council chamber was large enough to hold 100 members of the public, and the building was described as being classic Renaissance, and at the front would be carved the coat of arms of the borough. Although it did sound rather grand at the time, it was also described as being quite simple in nature, or not over the top in simple terms. There are some beautifully engraved windows inside the town hall, showing various different scenes of Wallsend life at the time it was built, such as the shipyards and the collieries. The town hall has seen a few major events over the years, and a couple worth a mention are: in June of 1926, Margaret Bonfield was the Labour candidate at Wallsend. She won the by-election with a majority of over 9,000, and huge crowds gathered outside of the town hall to celebrate her victory. They lined the streets to cheer for her victory. She seems to have been a very popular lady at the time, and I will cover the history of her life at a later date. The late Queen Elizabeth II and the late Duke of Edinburgh visited the town hall and waved to the crowds from the balcony in October of 1954. Crowds of Wallsenders had lined the streets to catch a glimpse of her as she drove up the high street. This was part of her coronation tour of the UK, and although she would visit Wallsend on several occasions, this was her first visit since becoming Queen. The town hall was also the scene of protests to the incredibly unpopular poll tax. I remember this well, but I'm not planning on discussing the issue, just merely mentioning the fact that the protests were held there just as they were in many other cities. And I also believe that crowds would gather outside of the town hall on New Year's Eve to bring in the new year. I wonder if they sang Auld Lang Syne. I bet they did. I was sadly too young to ever take part in these celebrations, and so far I have never found any photos that were taken of the New Year's Eve celebrations over the years. The town hall survived both the First and Second World Wars, and I have no doubt that it played its part in the celebrations at the end of both of these. The town hall continued to serve as the headquarters of the Wallsend Borough Council until it became known as North Tyneside Council in around 1974, and it still continued to be the meeting place of the council until they finally moved to their new business premises at the Cobalt Business Park in around 2008. Our beautiful town hall was now no longer needed for the purpose it was built for. It was, of course, far too important to the town to be demolished, so a new use was needed for it. Like all old buildings, its upkeep had to be paid for, which is never cheap, and hard to justify when a building is standing empty. However, it was eventually sold, refurbished, and is now used mostly as office space. The town hall is a Grade 2 listed building, and it was listed in February of 1986. It was described as being of bright red brick with ashlar plinth. This is the part that gives it the sandstone appearance, and a Welsh slate roof. A central bay window recessed with double doors and a balcony. Although no longer a town hall, it's great to know that the building is still there and will hopefully remain there for many more years to come. I hope you have enjoyed this very short history of the town hall, and I thank you all for watching. And I'm sorry, I hope you can't hear my printer switching off in the background, but you might be able to. Anyway, thank you for watching.